Hello everybody, the UofCWildcat here, and I'm bringing you a Dragon Ball Z deck lab. Probably gonna come out a day late, or really late at like midnight on Wednesday when they're supposed to come out. But with regionals, literally this upcoming weekend, going to have the first one in Salem, Oregon, and then the weekend after is going to be at Gen Con, where there's already 200 people, I think is what the number is, what is finally decided on. They've capped it out at 200 because it was at like 200 plus, but now they said, hey, 200 is the max number we're gonna have, and finally sold out. So with all you guys going into this, I thought it would be a great idea to give you a deck that I feel like is the best meta deck and what you're going to see most of at Gen Con. And that deck is going to be Namekian Piccolo. And I never really got to one of these in sets 1 or 2 because it never really was a priority. I never wanted to play it. And there wasn't really OP to really go up against the best deck, and everybody knew what the best deck is. But now I've got a chance to lay this all out for you. I wanted to be able to show you guys with a week till Gen Con what I feel is the best Namekian deck that you will see, how it's going to work, and what will be the best way to test against this deck. So to start it off, let's go on to the list, and then we'll go on to the strategy. We'll then talk about the matchups, and then in the final verdict, I will talk about best ways to test against this deck, and basically my thoughts on why this deck is still the best deck. So with that said, let's go on to the list. Alrighty guys, onto the list. I'll throw the list on the screen right now for you guys to see. You can screen cap it, take a picture of it, stop the video, write it down if you want. Hopefully you'll get that down, and now we'll move on. We'll start out with the non-combats. I mean, pretty standard in most any Namekian decks right now. You always run all 7 Dragon Balls. It's probably one of your main win conditions. Either this or winning by anger. And right now this deck is mainly by anger, but having all the balls as a backup when you're getting wrecked by some physical decks is never a bad thing. Then we actually run 2 allies. There's a card that we'll have later in the deck that is just broken, and you might as well have the allies. You get Krillin, which is great against the black matchup. You kill their Smoothness Drill every turn. It's during your rejuvenation step. So even if you enter combat and they have Smoothness Drill out, if you entered on them, Smoothness Drill will go away because the rejuvenation step is always going to happen. It just is a matter of when you're going to rejuve. Then we got Kami, again, with the Dragon Balls. Again, you can win by Dragon Ball victory. So using Kami, there's another card later in the deck. They can really combo with Kami to try and get all your balls out. We got Dragon Radar. One of the searchers plays a ball, pretty much an auto-include. You got Growth, which is really good. It's one of the new set cards. But this card is just stupid in what it does. You can either play a Dragon Ball from your hand, rejuvenate 4, or if you're at level 3 or higher, you can search your life deck for any styled card and play it, which is unreal. So this card, again, combos with other cards later in the deck. You get 2 more Dragon Ball searchers in Dragon Clan, which can get 2 if you're at level 4, or you can get Disturbance, which will get a ball depending on your level. And then finally, 2 Visiting the Past. See it trying to kind of trickling out of decks a lot more because people are saying that, you know, it's kind of a slower card, but I still like Visiting, and I'll probably try and put it in all my decks. Right here, my awesome proxies of Heroic Energy Sphere, because I'm at my buddies and we've been testing, so spheres are very hard to come by, so I'll put them as proxies with Trunks Energy Spheres. Hurried Quest, again, another card that's fantastic to reuse your balls. It's sort of, this deck that I've built is more of a mix between Ball Bounce and Anger, but the Ball Bounce is really prevalent with this card. Got Overtime, just a fantastic card, probably one of the most broken cards. Silencing, you don't want your opponent to be camping balls, especially with Garlic Jr. around right now. So this card, really good, and stops events, which is really fantastic. And then your passive anger in Piccolo's Weighted Clothing. Moving on to the attacks, Wall Breaker is still probably the biggest hurdle this deck will ever face. So 2 Focus Assaults, really like the card. I would try and fit 3 in, but again, we have so many attacks, as you can tell. We got Double Strike. Again, this is probably one of your strongest energy attacks besides the next card. And plus, it's a crit effect and shuffles a ball, more reusing of the balls. Max Will, which is probably the best anger control card, and it's in one of the best styles, so, I mean, obviously. 6 life cards and 2 endurance. Very good card. Onslaught used to always be a 3 of in my decks, but when we were testing, we realized, well, shit, this card is a lot less effective, and we never really get it with overtime anymore. We never really visiting the past it. So it's a good card. Get you 2 anger if you have if you have 2 or more balls out. But other than that, it's just kind of a meh card. Palm shot, shuffling balls in is pretty good. And then being able to place one into play, plus draw the bottom card of your discard pile. Pretty good card, and it didn't really run before, but it's really good now. Gut Punch. The reason this card's good, with Kami, you can destroy X-allies. So you can destroy your own allies. So you can destroy Kami and go and get a Dragon Ball into play, which is basically another Dragon Ball searcher. And then finally, Namekian Right Throw. 3 anger. Hard to pass up. Move on to our blocks, and it's kind of more of a passive build, so we've got a decent amount of blocks. We've got 3 of these energy guards, probably the best energy block. We got 2 patient blocks, again, more ball bouncing, wanting to reuse all those balls as much as possible. Namekian Flinch, which is probably the best block in the game, with the ability to shuffle a ball, play a ball. You don't even have to shuffle a ball to play a ball, and at the same time, if it's rejuvenated, grab an ally. The one card that has replaced knee block easily is this card. It's still in 2 endurance. You still stop attack. You don't gain an anger when it's rejuvenated, but your opponent can't cop balls when you stop a physical. So really hard not to play that as well. Hybrid defense, again, probably the second most broken block in the game. And then time is a warrior's tool. So that right there is the list. A lot of staple cards, but there's a few of the new set cards that I don't think a lot of people like to run and don't really see the combos with. So speaking of combos, we will go on to the strategy of the deck. Alrighty guys, moving on to the strategy of the deck. The deck really gets its boost by reusing the Dragon Balls. Being able to use certain Dragon Balls probably 4 to 5 times a game. One of my favorite combos, which was set 2, was probably playing this bad boy about 7 times a game. There actually was one game where I got wall broken on level 2 because he didn't understand that I was playing a ball bounce variant. So the fact that, you know, he leaves me on 2, so I was able to use level 2 power, mill 2, and rejuvenate 2, keep myself alive, draw a card, and at the same time, being able to play ball 7 about 5 or 6 times in the game, milling between 15 to 18 cards from his deck just by passively playing a card and setting up the best hand ever, was unreal. And that's why I really like this version of the deck that I've got built. A lot of that really hinders around cards like Namekian Flinch, Namekian Hurried Quest. Hurried Quest, you know, bouncing a ball into your hand, using that ball, using another ball to bounce in your hand, and then with the new card Namekian Growth, if you have that in play, you play the ball that you've bounced into your hand and you use it again. Now, what you might be thinking, like, where are combinations that this would be good? Well, if you're trying to speed anger on the opponent, ball 5 is stupid to play because in combat it's 2 anger every time you use it. So if you Hurry Quest it back in your hand, that's 2 anger. You Growth it back into play, it's 2 anger. And then all you need is another 1 anger card. And then you've got cards like Flinch, which are just absolutely stupid, where you can shuffle any ball and play. It can be your opponent has captured your ball and you want to be able to get it back. You can shuffle that ball in and play it into play. You don't even have to shuffle a ball, like I saw a play that my buddy did against a Saiyan Turles deck who tried to Sagacious Strike his last ball, so he played Flinch to attempt the block and just played the last ball before he did, and he had 7 balls and he wins the game. So, I don't know. Being able to do that with this block is really unreal. And then the other combination, you get Gut Punch to destroy Kami to go get a ball. It's basically like a replenishable ball search, and I think that's really stupid to do, but it's in the deck, so I mean, might as well run it while you can. So on top of that, Kami is stupid with its rejuvenation to keep you alive, so prolonging the game is what Namekian does best. Other than that, it's just a lot of reusing those balls. You got cards like Double Strike to shuffle the ball in the deck, Right Throw to shuffle the ball in the deck, Patient Block. I had Zone Pressure in for a while, but kind of was underwhelming in testing, so I took it out. But that's basically all the strategy of the deck, so let us move on to the matchups. Alrighty guys, moving on to the matchups of this deck. We actually went through an intensive about close to 24 hours I think we've done in the past week testing session, and Namekian was one of the prime culprits that we had to test against. And looking at our board that we've got together, Namekian has a big problem with Garlic Jr. right now. Like I said, the big goal of the deck is reusing your balls, and Garlic Jr.'s level 3 power is absolutely ridiculous because every time he gains an anger, he's going to cap that ball, and he's going to keep it for himself, and if he gets to level 4, you can't get your balls back. The only way you could do that is using cards like Flinch to shuffle it back, getting back into your deck. I think you could Hurry Quest a ball he has back into your hand, but then you have to bounce a ball that you have in your hand, so you can't win by Dragon Ball victory that way because you're going to throw the ball back into the deck. Also has a little bit of a problem with Black Turles. It actually got wrecked by Black Turles a few times in testing just because of the amount of damage that it put on and the amount of pressure. Namekian couldn't really keep up, so really hard for Namekian to succeed that way. But and it also has a really big problem with Ginyu, but I mean that's to be expected for Namekian not being able to handle all that massive damage that it tries to throw at you. On top of that though, it actually does very well in a bunch of other matchups. I really like Namekian in certain decks. Like it really stifles all these physical decks that people are trying to run. Like if you try to run some physicals into this deck, you're really going to be hurting because it's got so many killer blocks. Like you run a Flinch into here and it's thanking you. So you're giving it Flinch fodder. You're giving it a bunch of other fodder like reinforced blocks so you can't capture the ball. So I mean, all those crit you're doing, whatever. It's still going to be able to do what it wants to do. And on top of that, it's probably going to level faster than you can keep it stage locked. So really overall, you're not doing a lot to Namekian with those physical decks, and it's really hard for you to win. But I mean, basically that's all we got for matchups. Namekian does what Namekian has done since set 1, and in set 3 it's got a few new tools, but other than that it's pretty much straightforward. So let us go on to the final verdict. Alrighty guys, moving on to the final verdict. If I had to give a rating to this deck, I think easily I would give this deck about an 8.5 to a 9 out of 10. The deck's very consistent. Everything in Namekian is just so synergistic with each other. It's not the best style, because I still think the best style is black, but every card works with each other in Namekian, and the mastery itself just makes it that much better, and Piccolo is just the best personality for it. I know a lot of people are on the Slug hype train, but Slug is very underwhelming, because when you lose one of your main win conditions in Namekian and MPPV, and then on top of that, with Garlic Jr. floating around, Dragon Ball victory is really hard. Slug is rather underwhelming, as Namekian is, in that damage destruction game. So Piccolo really just does it better with the Dragon Ball mill, with the anger, being able to hit 4 and 5 anger, the fastest out of anybody in Namekian, even faster than Gohan, but I don't know. If I had to give a rating for this deck, it's rather easy. I would say it's in between beginner and intermediate, because the deck can really go autopilot sometimes. I can hand this deck to anybody and be like, hey, this is what you need to do, this is how you win the game, and they can pretty much win the game from there. It's definitely a great learner deck as well. If you want somebody who's like, hey, I want to be competitive in the scene, I want to be able to go out to tournaments, I want to win some bigger events, maybe top cut in places, you know, this is the deck I would give to them. And now going on, how do you test against this deck? Namekian is the deck that you're going to want to test against. Like I told you, like I tell on the Facebook page all the time, there are a lot of people who are like, oh, I've built this deck and it's so good, I'm like 12-0, I think I've seen a few times. If you can't beat Namekian Piccolo on a consistent basis, you might as well trash your deck, because that's what you're going to see at least when we decided. It's about 30% of the meta that you're going to see at these regionals still. It was about 50 to 60% of what you would see at any event before set 3. And now that set 3's come out, it is going to be a little less. But again, this deck is proven, it's tested, it's always going to work. There's no reason to not run this deck if you're a beginner and you don't want to go through the testing and you're thinking, hey, how am I just going to, you know, do well in a tournament? This is the deck for people who want to do that. So if that's the deck for you, hopefully this has helped you guys. And if you're trying to fight against it, hopefully you know some of the strategies that the deck likes to do. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you liked the video, leave a like rating, subscribe for more Dragon Ball Z Deck Labs. Hopefully next week, because I am definitely going to be in Gen Con, or getting ready for Gen Con, so maybe I will throw up a deck that is a fun deck, and then when I come back, it'll probably be another fun deck, but then when I come back from regionals, I will probably throw the deck that I use in both events up on DBZ Deck Labs, and hopefully you guys will enjoy that. So again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. This is the UFC Wildcat, signing out.